Welcome to Lulu's Storytime, where imagination comes to life. Get ready to dive into a world full of heartwarming tales that will capture your imagination as you drift off to sleep.
The Fourth Magical Adventure with Granny, Billy the Beast. Illustrated by Sanji Parvin. Written and read by Lila Ann Gray. Granny, Tallulah and Gracie were out for a walk in the woods near Granny's cottage. It was a lovely hot day. The sun was shining and reflecting on the leaves of the trees. Sunbeams were shining down in shafts of brilliant light, shimmering prettily on the path. It looked as if someone had switched on a light bulb just where they were walking. The air was cooler in the woods, and all three were chattering away happily. Tallulah and Gracie were skipping along in front of Granny, when suddenly Tallulah stopped and caught hold of Gracie's hand, saying, "Did you hear that noise? I'm sure I heard someone crying, and quite loudly too." Granny and Gracie shook their heads and assured Tallulah that they had heard nothing at all. "Maybe it was the leaves rustling," suggested Granny, looking around. Then suddenly they all heard a low, menacing growling sound coming from a nearby bush. Granny immediately stepped in front of the girls and held up her hand to indicate they must stand still and listen. There was the noise again. Tallulah had been right after all. It sounded like a low, rumbling, growling sound, and the two girls were very frightened. Then a large shadow moved out from behind the bush, and they saw a very scary-looking creature barring their way on the path. Granny immediately said in a gentle voice, "Are you hurt? Was it you that was crying just now? Can we help you in any way?" As they stood still, the creature continued to growl menacingly and took a step forward. "Stop right there this minute, you very rude creature. You haven't answered my questions, and you certainly do not scare me at all." Granny spoke in her very sternest voice. As Granny said those words, the creature lifted back its head and made a loud roaring noise that seemed to come from deep inside his throat. Granny was very cross indeed and shouted at the creature, "You can stop that nonsense right now. I will not tolerate temper tantrums. My girls would never be so rude, so calm down and tell us exactly what is troubling you." In a quieter voice, Granny reassured the creature they weren't there to cause it harm or distress. All they wanted to do was help. With that, the creature sat down quickly on the path, and with tears rolling down his cheeks, he said, "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to be rude. I'm not scary at all. I'm just so lonely. People take one look at me and think I'm going to hurt them because they say I look different to what they are used to." Trying hard not to cry so much, he continued, "I've had things thrown at me. People can be so cruel, and I've had nasty people try and capture me, but I managed to run away from them. They call me the Beast, and that's why I growl and pretend to be scary. I can't help the way I look. If they only knew how frightened of them I am. All I want is friends to laugh and play with me. I just want to be loved and needed." "Oh, my dear," sighed Granny sadly, "you are a silly Billy to get so upset. There's always a solution to every problem, so don't worry. We'll work something out together." "Granny," said Tallulah, moving out from behind Granny and pulling Gracie with her, "that's the perfect name. Instead of being called the Beast, why not be called Billy the Beast? It sounds a lot friendlier." She shyly looked at the creature and asked, "Would you be happy with that name? And please, could we be your friends?" The creature started to sob loudly. He was so overcome by such kindness. Once he managed to stop crying, his eyes shone with joy, and he answered, "Oh, I've never had a proper name, and no one has ever wanted to be my friend. Oh, yes, please. I love my new name, and it will be wonderful for us to be friends. Thank you so much." Billy asked them if they would like to go with him and see his den, where he would spend much of his time hiding away from everyone. "I'm really sorry for trying to scare you all," he apologised. "I do hope you will forgive me." "Of course we will, dear," assured Granny, "and we would love to see your home." "It's not very nice," said Billy sadly. "I've been so lonely and sad I haven't bothered to do anything with it, but I'd still like you to see it. When I'm all alone, I can remember your visit, and that will comfort me." "Oh, dearie me," said Granny, "this is not good at all. We are going to have to help you. You definitely have been on your own too long. Let me have a think about this while you take us to your home." The girls went up to Billy and shyly put their hands on him and stroked his fur. They told him they thought he was beautiful and not scary at all. Billy's heart swelled with pride and happiness to hear himself being praised. It was such a joy for him and a very new experience. As the girls skipped along next to Billy, chatting away and making him laugh, Granny became very quiet and thoughtful. Just as they arrived at Billy's den, Granny clapped her hands in delight and cried out, "I've got it! I've got the answer to help Billy!" Tallulah, Gracie and Billy stopped in their tracks and waited for Granny to catch them up so she could explain exactly what she meant. It had taken a lot of thought and concentration, but having found what she felt was a wonderful solution, she could hardly wait to tell the others. "Auntie Julie lives in a cottage on a farm, doesn't she, girls?" said Granny, rushing on in her excitement, not waiting for them to answer. "She told me the other day that Farmer Pete was desperate for some help on his farm. His cows are being disturbed at night by some naughty animals who think it's great fun to keep waking them up, making the cows moo in shocked surprise. That noise would then wake up the whole herd and they would start mooing too. That would then wake up Farmer Pete, his wife and their children in their farmhouse, and even Auntie Julie in her cottage on the farm would get woken up too." Farmer Pete's wife had told Auntie Julie that the foxes were also being particularly naughty as well. They were trying to steal the chickens' eggs and capture the chickens. The noise was unbearable most nights and everyone was very upset. "What has that to do with Billy, Granny?" asked Tallulah. "Well," replied Granny, "up at the farm they are wanting someone to guard the farm at night and to cheer up the cows and chickens during the day. I think Billy would be ideal," she continued. "He is so lovely, friendly and kind and would help everyone to feel better, but he can also appear to be very fierce. He would be wonderful at scaring off the intruders at night. What do you think, Billy?" Oh, I think that is the most marvellous idea ever," replied Billy. "Thank you so much, Granny. I promise I would be so helpful and I would be sure to look after everybody. It would be lovely to be wanted. I am so excited. I am going to dance, skip and jump." That is exactly what Billy did. He looked so funny and was laughing so much he kept falling over. Granny, Tallulah and Gracie started to laugh with him, and their laughter echoed eerily all round the woods. "Now we've got to work out how we can get Billy to the farm," said Granny. "But first of all we need to go home and phone Auntie Julie. I can't get a signal from my mobile phone out here in the woods." "We could take Billy back to the cottage, Granny," suggested Gracie. "He could sleep in your shed for tonight, and tomorrow we could get him in your car and cover him with a blanket so no one can see him. Tallulah and I are sleeping over at yours tonight, so we can easily help." "Oh, can we go to your cottage now?" pleaded Billy. "I have nothing to take. I'm going to have a new life, and that thought is all I need to take with me." Billy spent a very comfortable night tucked up in Granny's shed, falling asleep quickly. Next morning they set off to Auntie Julie's, and Billy curled up on the floor in the back of the car, chattering quietly to the girls. Before they knew it, they had arrived, and as Billy climbed out of the car, his eyes were shining with excitement. He looked around at his new home and was amazed at the vastness of the surrounding countryside. Farmer Pete came over to look at Billy. He had no idea Granny, Tallulah and Gracie could speak to animals. He said to Granny, "Strange-looking creature. Doesn't look very scary to me. I need him to be kind and cheerful with my animals, but very scary and fierce to any intruders. Oh, just look at him. I don't think he'd be very good at that." Billy looked in alarm at Granny and the girls, dreading the thought of being sent back to his horrible den in the woods. "Tallulah," said Granny, winking hard at her, "could you just show Farmer Pete what Billy is capable of?" Tallulah knew immediately what Granny wanted, and she whispered something to Gracie, who climbed onto Billy's back, while Tallulah showered him with kisses on his face. "Well, now," said Farmer Pete, "that's all very nice, and I can see what a loving, kind creature he is, but I'm afraid I need Scary, very scary, and I don't think he's capable of that." Gracie climbed off Billy's back while Tallulah pretended to give him a last kiss, but she whispered instructions in his ear. Suddenly Billy turned around and started to slowly walk menacingly towards Farmer Pete, baring his teeth and making the most awful, frightening, growling sound from deep down in his belly. Farmer Pete's eyes widened in horror, and he grabbed Granny's hand and hissed, "Call him off! I say call him off! He's about to pounce!" Billy looked at Farmer Pete, then went quickly to Granny's side. Then he leaned over and licked the farmer's hand. Granny and the girls laughed, and Granny reassured Farmer Pete that Billy was loving and loyal and would protect them all by turning into a scary beast any time there was trouble on the farm. Farmer Pete started to laugh too, especially when he thought of the fright he had when he saw such a fierce and scary side to Billy. At that moment Farmer Paul, Farmer Pete's brother, sauntered over to see why everyone was laughing, and Billy, not knowing who he was, immediately started to growl, making Farmer Paul turn around ready to run away. "It's all right, Paul," said Farmer Pete. "This is Billy, who is going to watch over us all. He's not really scary at all." Billy was so happy to at last be understood, to be needed, and to have wonderful friends who loved him. "I will make sure Billy is very happy here on the farm," assured Farmer Pete. "Billy, you will have plenty to eat and a lovely cosy corner in the barn to sleep. It will be close to the cows and the chickens, and everyone is going to be so grateful to you for protecting us all." Billy's heart was close to bursting with pride and great joy. He had never felt so happy. Farmer Pete brought over his wife and children to meet Billy, and Farmer Paul brought his wife too. Everyone was so delighted to have this new member of the farm family. Auntie Julie had her hand softly on Billy as they all waved goodbye to Granny and the girls. Granny's wonderful idea had certainly saved the day all round. Billy knew he had so much to be grateful for, and knew it wouldn't be too long before he would see Granny, Tallulah and Gracie again, as they visited Auntie Julie and all on the farm as often as they could. When Granny, Tallulah and Gracie arrived back at Granny's cottage, it was time for tea, a nice bath, their favourite programme on the TV, and then bedtime. They were all really tired. Granny had brought back with her some lovely fresh farm eggs. There was still some beautiful honey left that had been a special gift from the Queen Bee when Granny and the girls had saved the lives of 3 precious little bumblebees. They enjoyed their feast very much after such a busy couple of days. Once the girls had enjoyed a bedtime story being read to them, they were dozing as Granny switched off the light, and as she closed the door, they were both fast asleep. Their last thought had been of their magical adventure with Granny, and how lovely it was to know that Billy was happy and content with his new life, and that he, at long last, felt needed and loved. There just couldn't be a better adventure. Or could there?
Come back to Lulu's for more story time.